If you enjoy listening to inspirational stories from people just like us, facing the fear and doing it anyway, then you're in the right place. My name is Claire Hill, and this is the No Rest for the Vivid podcast. Hello, this is Claire Hill on my podcast. Episode 1 is all about me. Just thought that if you were going to invest your time in listening to me on this podcast, you better know a little bit about me. I'm so excited about this podcast. I'm really excited about the name, No Rest for the Vivid. I do want to say right now a disclaimer that I am not encouraging no rest. This podcast is all about inspirational stories and facing the fear and doing it anyway. And I thought that this podcast episode should be my story. I'm not proclaiming I'm inspirational, but I've had a lot on my plate and got through it all. And on many occasions I've faced the fear and done it anyway, especially with this podcast. I've delayed launching this podcast for about 3 weeks because I was pooing my pants about it. Coming from my background and then sitting here doing a podcast, it just seemed quite alien, but I had to do it. There was something inside me that was telling me I had to, and I had a lot of encouragement from a few people as well, so I'm going to blame them if it goes wrong. I'm Claire Hill. I am from Kent, Medway. Lived in Medway most of my life, apart from a short stint of a few years in London when I went to university at Brunel, which was a wonderful time. I come from a single parent family. We lost our dad when I was 8 and we weren't very well off. I think that's quite an understatement actually. My mum had the 3 of us at home and was pregnant with my brother when my dad passed away. So things were pretty tight. And we just about coped through the years, but I did really love school, and I found that my identity of learning, I suppose not the identity of learning, but just having a different persona at school, I really enjoyed it. I loved learning. I'm just obsessed with, I was obsessed with reading. I was absolutely obsessed with reading. I remember reading Matilda and reading it 5 times in a row from start to finish. And actually, that's the only book, apart from another book that I've just finished, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I will talk about that book in another episode because it is absolutely phenomenal. Please read it, especially if you're a creative person. But that kind of reading and obsession with words started when I was quite young, and writing as well, and I've always written. I'm currently writing a book, which is all top secret, especially with this podcast. I kept it quite secret for a while because it was an idea that I wanted to protect, and that's especially the same with the book, but that should be ready by next year. So I went to school, really loved school, was obsessed with maths and science. I was bullied a bit. Everyone used to call me a boffin. No surprise there. But I didn't really let it faze me. I just loved learning so much. Went through school and met my first boyfriend. Now, it is a bit weird. How does your first boyfriend influence your career? Well, his mum, I mean, he's a great guy, but his mum is one of the most inspirational people I've ever met. And she saw something in me. And I don't know where she saw it, but she thought that I was a little bit special, and she just took me under her wing, and I suppose in a way mentored me. So from about the age of 16, I basically moved in with her. Then she was running supported housing schemes for adults with learning disabilities. Now, this was back in 2001, so the Supporting People programme, if you are aware of that, had only just come out, and it was a way of introducing adults with learning disabilities back into the community, because before that a lot of them were in residential homes and didn't have They did have rights, but they weren't as their rights weren't as fostered as they could have been, and it was all about empowering them. I felt very passionate about it, and still is to this day. The company's still running, but I met these amazing individuals who could be really independent. They just needed a little bit of guidance. So back in 2001, you didn't have to be 18 to work with vulnerable adults, so you could just be 16. So I started working there, doing shifts. Actually, I might have been 17 when I started working there, but I did my sixth form at the local, I went to a girls' grammar. Sorry, this story's all over the place, I do apologise. I went to a girls' local grammar school because in Kent we have the selective schools. So I went to a girls' school and just thought, I need some male influence in my life because there was a lot of girls indoors. So I went to the local boys' grammar school for sixth form. Met my best friends that I'm best friends with now, and my best friend, we was just me and her in a class of boys. But I used to do shifts. I used to do night shifts at the supported housing and then go to school. I think about it now. What was I thinking? But I was just really driven. So I would go to school. It was always a Thursday that I would do it, or a Sunday. I would go to school, go straight to the supported house in my school uniform, because the sixth form you had to wear school uniform, and then do my shift, do a night shift. It was a sleep-in night shift, which was good, so I only had to work till 9. I'd do my homework, go to bed, get up for school, and then there would be, crossover. The next person would come on and I'd go to school. So yeah, I worked pretty hard through sixth form. I nearly got chucked out of sixth form because I didn't really get on with my chemistry A-level, and I was found at a local radio station at the time. It was called Invicta FM, and I was supposed to be doing a chemistry exam. I didn't realise it was a proper A-level exam because it was a practical exam. You have to do an experiment. I didn't realise this. But Invicta FM were doing a roadshow in the hall and everyone else had a free period. And I was like, sod this, I'm going to watch this radio station. Anyway, I ended up getting on the stage and winning a T-shirt. And I remember the deputy head came out, well done, Claire. Really supporting the fact that we have girls in the sixth form. It's going to go be in the paper. It's amazing. I was like, yes. I have actually bunked a lesson though, haven't I? It'd be all right. And I remember going straight to my granddad's. And if you do know me on Instagram, from Instagram, you'll know my granddad was a massive part of my life, my granddad Fred. And I went straight round his house and I was like, Granddad, you won't believe what's happened. Just got myself in the paper. Can you believe it? But I might be in trouble. He said, oh, don't worry, Claire. I think this is exactly how he used to sound. Don't worry, Claire. Well, you've got to follow you up, babe. You'll be all right. Don't worry about it. And I got into loads of trouble the next day because I'd bunked an exam. They said to me, why have you bunked? I said, I just can't do chemistry. I just can't do it. So they offered me to do an A-level in a year. I was about at the end of year 12 by then. So I did a geography A-level in a year. Again, absolute bonkers. But so yeah, that was my sixth form. And then I decided that I would follow in my boyfriend's mum's steps and go into supporting adults with learning disabilities. I really was amazingly passionate about it. Still am. But my career went off on another direction. So I went to university, went to Brunel and studied a degree in health services management and administration. I then fell in love with the idea of managing a hospital. So that was the dream. But when I left university, those jobs weren't really as easy to get as I imagined them to be. And I left university, had an absolute blast. Again, met some of my best friends. And my best friends from uni probably know me better than anybody because we lived together. Once you've lived with me, you never forget it. I came back to Kent, and after a long time, it felt like I then started working with a charity, and we offered support to homeless families, and I adored that work. I did a lot of safeguarding, adult and children, and was able to find housing, permanent housing for vulnerable families. It was really, really rewarding. Then I went and managed some homes, became a manager in Maidstone. That was really excellent. I was able to sort of design services, which was really cool. And I remember starting there, I was only 25. Blooming hell, I was 25 when I started managing these homes, and lots of people weren't happy with me doing it. They thought I was too young. And a parent of one of the service users said, I really did think you were too young for this job, but you've managed to be the best manager we've ever had. So I was pretty impressed with that. But at the time, while I was doing all of that supported housing stuff, I was actually running my own small business called Violet and May. I would make jewellery and accessories and wedding accessories and bouquets out of ribbon and beads and headbands. I made so much stuff. The job in Maidstone didn't really work out, so I left that and became self-employed. And it was really, 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 really tough. I was living on my own. I'd bought a flat and I had to pay the mortgage, and it ended up the fear was just too much. I just didn't have the right support and network to make it a success. And I still carried it on though, but I did have to work at the same time. So I ended up working in homeless hostels and doing personal care for people, which was fine at the time, but I needed to, a bit more security. So I went back to my old job working in the charity and became a manager there. And then through a period of shift with the government, we were facing huge redundancies. The government cut our funding. But fortunately for me, I, number one, decided, screw this, I'm going into education, and wrote 40 letters to schools across the county asking if they needed a teacher that could teach health and social care, because that was my sort of specialism at the time. And one school out of 40 came back and said, we do actually have a space. So I went to it for an interview, no teaching experience at all, just a lot of passion again. I'd been watching Educating Essex, and it really did change my life at the time. And then secondly, through the meetings with the council, the local authority and other services, the managers would come together in a forum sort of based meeting. I met my husband, who was managing some homeless hostels, and he sort of chaired the meetings. And at the time, we had to keep our relationship secret because it was just, he was from sort of a competing service. It was all very exciting at the time. And then I became a teacher. And while being a teacher, number one, I've never been so tired in all my life, apart from the first month of having a baby. Teaching really does take it out of you, and anyone that doesn't think that they deserve the holidays, they really, really do. And then, I taught health and social care for a while, became a qualified teacher, and then decided I wanted to teach maths, and just really worked phenomenally hard at this school, and became an assistant head teacher after 5 years, I think. And it was my goal to become an assistant head before I got married, and I achieved it. Yeah, and then we got married. Fell pregnant, moved house. No, actually that's not correct. We got engaged, moved house, got married, and I fell pregnant in a year. Oh, and all the while through this bit, I was starting my master's degree. When I say this stuff out loud, I do think I am actually bonkers, but I just haven't, literally, I've worked and worked. I never have a day off. I do not encourage that, by the way. You should have days off. So I started my master's degree, and then I went into maternity leave. And for somebody who has worked as hard as me, or anyone actually, the change in who I was and my new role was phenomenal. And I think I did have a little bit of postnatal depression, not for very long, but I managed to get myself out of it by creating. And for the wedding, I used my violet and May skills to create all of the flowers. We didn't have any fresh flowers, all dried or handmade flowers. And I used a lot of wire in the bouquets. And I was sitting, Jackson must have been, I don't know, maybe even, not even 2 months old. And I was thinking, what can I do? He's having a nap. What can I do to sort of entertain myself? Because it was like my brain didn't have enough energy to read, but my hands wanted to do something creative. So I had this creative box and I just took some stuff out and just started bending this wire. Looked into it, realised I could make letters out of it, and then I became addicted, like super addicted. I couldn't stop making. As soon as Jackson, this was before, you know, that magical time before your child can crawl, and you can just leave them on a mat for like 10 minutes and they can entertain themselves. I just have these little 5 and 10 minute snippets a word? These little tiny periods of when I would just make something, and I just had a tray full of tools and wire, and I would just sort of have the tray ready when I could grab a 5 minutes. And it just developed, and then my best mate said, you know, you can sell these on Etsy. I was like, no. She's like, yeah, look. And she actually had a couple of things saved in her basket. I thought, oh, okay. I'd had a daydream a few years before of running my own business and calling it Vivid, because my maiden name is Vidler and everyone calls me Vid. And I just thought, how amazing would it be if I had a business called Vivid something or other, because then I'm quite vivid and it's got my name in it. How cool would that be? So straight away the business became Vivid Wire, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And then I went back to work full time, and my mental health went downhill quite rapidly because of just being so tired. Because there was not one point of when I was struggling that I wanted to give Vivid up at all. I just ploughed through. I used to get up at 4, work before Jackson woke up, and then go to work, come home, mark my books, plan my lessons, and then make wire art again until like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then sleep. I just was just so obsessed by it. Thank the Lord for my very supportive husband. I decided that I was going to leave the school I was at, got another job at another school, and that wasn't going to work out. And I remember I went for a job at my sister's primary school, and where she's deputy head, and they started talking about me teaching PE, and straight away I was like, nah, I don't teach PE, I teach maths. Okay, this isn't for me. Because it's so funny being so creative and actually teaching maths. Though my logic of that is that especially with algebra, you're trying to find a solution, you're constructing something to create the solution to a problem. And I find that's what creative work is. So yeah, I sat and cried, and my husband said, you do have a job, you do have Vivid. So we decided to just go for it. And that was 15 months ago. So I've been running Vivid Wire for almost 3 years, sort of 2.5, 3 years, and been full-time for 15 months. And it's brilliant. I definitely feel I was always very, very creative before my dad passed away. And I was very creative through my teens and university. But serious life, the life that, when I was a child, when I was a young carer, when I was younger, I couldn't prioritise being creative. I had housework to do. I had to look after my mum and my sisters and my brother, and I didn't have the luxury of, what should I do this afternoon? I know, I'll make something. It just didn't happen. And as I grew older, I did have snippets, but I think, I've used that word again, snippets. Have I just made a word up? But I think having the luxury of maternity leave, or just actually Jackson being born and me finding out, what a mum was going to be like, there was something inside me that was like, Claire, I've had enough now. You need to get creative. And I did. And now I am writing a book. I've just become a small business mentor, which I'm really excited about. I'm actually going to start some coaching training soon, and I've just launched this podcast. I definitely want this podcast to be for anybody, because it is going to be about facing the fear and doing it anyway, because facing fear and being scared about a new adventure is totally normal, but I think sometimes we have to be reminded about when normal people have achieved it. So I hope you enjoy it. Please leave a review if you have. Well, if you haven't, you can leave a review. Free speech. Follow me on No Rest for the Vivid podcast on Instagram. I'm going to be updating that. You can find me over on Vivid Wire on Instagram as well. If you want to have a look at my website, just Google Vivid Wire. But I really hope you enjoy this podcast. I've got some amazing people coming on, and I'm really proud of it. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourself, and make sure you've drunk enough water today. Thank you so much for listening to the No Rest for the Vivid podcast, written, produced and hosted by Claire Hill, and music has been composed by my brother Phil Vidler.